factory, they had a very small turbocharger, no intercooler, so when the turbo gets hot... Hey, this is Mad Matt from Budget Boosting. I've got this 3.8 liter V6. It's from Buick Regal Grand National. And in another video I showed you guys how to do ARP main bolts. Now I'm going to show you how to do ARP head bolts. Now I already completed one side of the head just so I could show you the difference between stock bolts and ARP bolts. Here's a stock bolt. All the pressure on the stock bolt is on the head. Not good, because this head's going to elongate and pop off. ARP bolt, on the other hand, equal pressure, because there's not all the pressure resting on the head because the nut is grabbing it by the thread and the block is grabbing it by thread, so it's got even pressure throughout the fastener instead of all the pressure on the head. Now if you look at the left and right sides of the engine, this left hand side right here has already ARP bolts installed and torqued, and the other side still has stock bolts, and you can see the differences. Very considerable difference, especially in the strength department. Stock bolts can handle stock pressure, no problem. Hell, this first original engine on my car had stock bolts that lasted for 27 years. But for the really high boost applications and high horsepower, these stock engines are notorious for blowing head gaskets when you start getting around 25 pounds of boost. Hence the ARP bolts to hold the head bolts and the head gaskets in place. Extra strength is very important, especially when you start running high numbers, high power. So this new engine that's going to the Buick's going to get all new ARP studs. The mains and the heads, because that's where most of the pressure is on this engine. My second engine I'm going to build for the Buick, this will be my biggest, baddest engine. Every fastener on that engine will be ARP, because that engine is going to be close to 1,000 horsepower. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to talk about what you look for, because the first thing is you want to get in your maintenance manual and verify all your torques, because every engine's different. The Buick engine's different than, say, a Honda engine, or a Nissan engine, or a Toyota engine. But for ARP head bolts, first you go in the manual, look up your torque specs and your torque sequence, because there's a certain order of torque you need to follow to put equal pressure along the head, gradually increasing the torque throughout the bolt sequence until you have your final torque. And I'll go over my final torque a few times because it's not worth not doing. This needs to be done right. Okay, and I'll show you these head bolts. There are three different lengths of head bolts on this particular Buick engine. There's long bolts for these center studs, or long. Medium-sized bolts, there are two medium-sized bolts. And there are four short bolts, which are the bottom here. So total of 8 bolts. 2 long, 2 medium, 4 shorter bolts. And you don't want to put those in the wrong location, because you're going to discover it later and go, oh no, now I have to backtrack, take bolts back out, and all that stuff. So now we're going to, I've already done the left side, so I'm going to show you guys, both sides are the same on this engine. But like I said, check your maintenance manuals, because every engine's different. So I'm going to show you the right side head. First off, going to break the torque loose on the head, but not too much to where the head shifts, or because I'm doing one bolt at a time. But I have to break them all loose at once and gradually put them in with just a snug torque through the bolt sequence, starting from 1 all the way to 8 on this particular engine. So I'm going to break loose the bolts first, then one by one replace them. But I'm not going to go too loose on these, because then the head will shift, and you don't want any shift, because this is a total remanufactured engine. I'm just putting stronger bolts and stronger hardware in here to where I don't waste all this money on this nice new crate engine. And starting from number 8, which is here. Loosen all the bolts. Okay, so far what I've done is I've loosened all the head bolts, and I've removed number 1 stock head bolt, and I've put an ARP head bolt in there and just gave it a slightly snug seating type of a torque. I didn't give it a torque yet, I just snugged it and seated it to where the head won't move as I go throughout the bolts. Then once I'm totally done with all the bolts, then I will torque them lightly in sequence. Every maintenance manual tells you different, so in this engine I'm going nice and easy and gradually until I get to 60 foot-pounds of torque. But I'm going at gradual stages. 1 pass, 2nd pass, and 3rd, and by the time I reach like the 4th pass, I'm hitting 60. So I'm gradually working my way up to torque to prevent any kind of warpage or any kind of damage to the heads or the gasket. So, but make sure you consult your maintenance manual to make sure you're doing the right torques and the right sequence for your engine. I'm doing it right for the Buick. So here I go. I'm going to work the next bolt in the sequence, which is number 2. Take out the factory bolt. And then I'm going to put an ARP bolt in. Factory bolt out. They're notorious for stretching, especially under high levels of boost. And this is going to be a short bolt. Finger thread it first. Nice and easy. Then once as far as your fingers can go, then get the Allen that fits inside that little groove on the bolt. So you can go a little bit tighter than finger torque. And run the bolt all the way down, basically into the block. That's what you're doing. Using the full extent of the thread so you're getting the most strength out of your bolts. You're using all the threads that you have to bottom of the block. So you just keep turning this till it's seated all the way to the bottom of the block. Then you put the ARP assembly lube on there, the fastener assembly lube, then the washer and the nut, which I will show you. And pretty much you're doing the same thing with all of these, so I'm just going to show you a few of these. I'm not going to show you all of them, so you won't be bored. Okay, some ARP assembly lube. Threads. A washer and a bolt. Washer and a nut. 1 washer. And 1 nut. Of course, always finger thread it down as far as your fingers can take it, then snug it with the socket. There it is. And once all of them are done like this, then we'll start going over it with the torque wrench in its sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I might have it a little bit backwards because I'm not looking at the chart, but make sure you're following the exact torque sequence. Like on this one, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. And that's how you'll do it with this Buick V6. But remember, check your manual because every engine is different, especially those overhead cam and dual overhead cam engines. They all got different specs, different torque sequences, different final torques, and different head bolt sizes and everything. Just make sure you get the ARP fastener that's right for your model and make and engine of car. Hey, I just finally got done with all the head bolts. Decided to throw the valve covers on and everything because I pretty much told you the whole gist of things. The only difference is I just put in all the bolts and torqued them all down in a torque sequence which the book is going to tell you. So we're all done here, and thanks for watching us at Budget Boosting. And if you like everything, you like what we see, what we do, like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube. Check out our new website, Budget Boosting. Awesome stuff. And remember, knowledge is power. It's horsepower. Because I'll show you the difference when I pull this bolt out. Here's a factory bolt. See, when you tighten this bolt in all the way, all this pressure is going to this head. And what happens is these bolts stretch. Well, an ARP bolt, the stud gets threaded in. And once you start tightening the nut,